Welcome to episode 76 of The Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. This week I'm joined by Zac Kurylyk, managing editor of ADVrider.com. And Zac fills me in on Honda's announcement that they are about to invest billions, that's billions with a B, into electrification of motorcycles. Sure to get the KLR with the milk crate crowd all revved up, this talk of electrification. But, that's fun in its own way too. And then after that, I'm going to talk about 4 adventure bikes that I have ridden recently, 4 2025 models: KTM 1290 Adventure, Yamaha Tenere 700, Harley-Davidson Pan America CVO, and the Triumph Tiger 900. And I'm going to give my feedback after spending a lot of miles in very chilly temperatures on those motorcycles. But first of all, a word from those who make the Lowdown possible. The Lowdown Show is presented by ADVrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger Defend and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design, with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. Honda has announced that they are going more aggressively into electric motorcycles. There was a piece on ADVrider.com of which you are the managing editor. And this is significant because anyone can say they're going to make an electric motorcycle, and all these niche brands that have come and gone are Zero or Damon or Cake or Pi or any of these other brands. But when Honda sets their sight on something, it means something different, doesn't it?
Honda is the world's largest motorcycle manufacturing company, and they make a pile of motorcycles. If they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it, and they're going to make it available everywhere that fine motorcycles are sold.
Even in New Brunswick, which is really beyond comprehensible. But yeah, they make, it's 19 or 21 million motorized two-wheelers a year, many of them small, naturally, but still, you compare that to Ducati, which manages to squeeze out 55,000 or something. So that, I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize how big Honda is. So what's the latest news? What's the announcement?
The latest news has to do with their full-sized electric motorcycle, the WN7, which is going to hit the market, according to our write-up here on ADVrider. You should be able to buy one in early 2026, at least in some markets. So Honda has been promising a full-sized electric motorcycle for some time, and now you'll actually be able to buy it. We have a rough timeline that it's going to show up, at least in the European market, presumably in North America or shortly afterwards.
And is there anything, do you know anything, or has Honda released any information about range, or what is its equivalent in terms of a internal combustion powered bike? Is it a 500 size? Do you know anything? Tell me what you know or what you can glean.
Well, Kawasaki claims their electric motorcycles are roughly equivalent to a 750 class bikes, or their hybrids rather, and I would say that this is Honda's intention. They're calling it the WN7, 750. The motor has 18 kilowatt output, which is about 24 horsepower. Honda says that's similar to a 600cc internal combustion engine. Now, I don't know the last.
Hang on a sec. Hold on. 24 horsepower? Is it? My God, where did they come up with that? Now, I know it's got lots of torque from 0 RPM, just like my blender, which can whip up my smoothie in no time and sound like a chainsaw doing it. But where do they come up? That's a bit of a weird thing, isn't that? 24 horsepower from a 600.
That is definitely going to be a stretch for some listeners, but it also has 100 Newton meters of torque. So you're getting your horsepower right off the line. You're getting 100 Newton meters of torque. So you're burning rubber, even though you're only on a little piddly 24 horsepower machine.
Which reminds me, which reminds me of something totally off topic. I remember, I think it was I got my start at Bike Magazine in the 90s. Someday I'll tell you about that young man. But anyway, their bike did one of their reviewers said something really funny about Harley-Davidsons. They were testing a Fat Glide or something, and they said, the writer said that Harley felt like the fastest thing in the world, up to 15 miles an hour, which is kind of electric motorcycles, is it not?
Well, I think Honda looks at this like the other electric motorcycle manufacturers have looked at this problem so far. And they say a lot of motorcycle traffic only goes to 15 miles an hour because it's riding around town. So these bikes are made with an emphasis on urban riding, especially because they usually feature regenerative braking. So when you hit the brakes, you pump electricity back into your battery, which is why electric motorcycles have better range in the city than they do on the highway.
Which makes me wonder. See, the regenerative braking thing kind of messes with my limited intellectual capability. See, well, there you go. See, limited intellectual capability. See, by stumbling over that, I proved the point I was trying to make. So if you go really fast and brake harder more often, it could almost be like the perpetual motion device. Anyway, we'll talk about that privately. But what's different about this? Do countries still have mandates that, by 2035, there's going to be no petrol available anywhere? And the KLR milk crate kids watching this are going nuts. So just calm down. Calm down. You'll still be able to get your fuel. It'll be from French fry vendors. But is that still a mandate? Because that kind of, it seemed it was a thing and everybody was gung-ho and every country was onto it, or many countries were. And then all of a sudden we haven't really heard much about it. Now, of course, Donald Trump is taking over the world, which has distracted us. But where does that sit right now?
I think it depends which market you're in. I have not heard of any changes to the plans in Europe or in India, which were two big markets leading the way towards electrification. I know that here in Canada, I believe the electrification laws do not apply to small engined vehicles. So I don't think motorcycles are affected yet. But since the House is sitting, once Parliament sits, things change quickly. Well, sometimes things change quickly. So who knows what legislation will come here in the next few months. And I believe in the U.S., it was a similar situation. But in the U.S., to a certain extent, it doesn't matter what the feds say because some of the stuff is written state by state. So California may say no internal combustion motorcycles by such and such a date, but you may be able to go buy them next door in Nevada.
Now, of course, Zac, Honda, being the world's largest manufacturer of two-wheelers, doesn't rush into these things willy-nilly. And so what is their long-term goal with electrification? Is there anything you can glean from that?
Honda, for the past 2 years, has been very consistent with its messaging that it is going into electric motorcycling big time. They've been selling small 50cc equivalent electric motorcycles in Asia now for quite some time with quick swap batteries. These have come to Europe. They are not available in North America yet. But they are working on these bigger electric motorcycles, like the one that I just announced, and other ones. And they are bringing them to our market in the years to come. In 2023, they announced they were going to invest $3.4 billion into EV motorcycles by the year 2030. So 2030 is only 5 years away, almost 4 years away, really, because we're most of the way through 2025. So Honda is going to be spending billions on these factories to build these new electric motorcycles in the next few years. So electric motorcycles are rare on our streets right now. but Honda is going to be building hundreds of thousands of them in the years to come.
Now, being a fisherman at heart, by profession, you have a natural degree of skepticism. How do you feel about this Honda announcement? Do you think that Honda is this another Fury chopper or Rune kind of thing, or do you think there's something in this? And the other thing too is that, and this is the hubris that we have as North Americans, or as those of us in the West, we think that everything is for us when really we are diminishing in importance. And for other markets in the world, this may be a wildly viable program. What do you think?
Honda is definitely the leader of the motorcycle world. If Honda decides they're going to do something, generally speaking, they're at the forefront. Sometimes they're too early for their own good, but what the direction they move in is the direction the industry moves in most of the time. Not all the time. We've seen Honda try to normalize automatic motorcycle transmissions since the 1970s. And it took until 2025 or 2024 for this to actually become widespread. Many manufacturers now have twist and shift or other clutchless shifting arrangements now, BMW, KTM, but this has all been in the last year. And I still don't really see people asking for this technology. The difference between twist and go automatic motorcycles and electric motorcycles is that the twist and go motorcycles exist beside standard shift motorcycles in the market. And at this point, consumers' choice is driven by what they want. People want shifting the standard way with their foot and the clutch. So they buy those motorcycles. The difference is that in a few years, the governments of many countries will make it difficult to buy gasoline-powered motorcycles. And in that case, you may not even be able to buy them at all. So you're going to have to buy an electric bike if you like it or if you don't. Now, I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying this is what we are being told is going to happen by governments around the world. And Honda is setting itself up to be the biggest player in this space in the next decade.
You know, it is a curious thing because if you look at, I saw some try that again. I saw some statistics saying that new car sales and the standard transmission, manual transmission in cars, vehicles, four-wheeled vehicles, is minuscule. I mean, it is 1 or 2%. It's something ridiculous, and it's falling all the time. And if you meet someone today who's younger and can drive a standard, it's almost a shock, isn't it? If you meet a 25-year-old who knows how to drive a manual transmission. And yet it's curious that motorcycles have resisted this. And I sometimes think, and I don't know why there hasn't been just a regular automatic transmission. Now, I know automatic transmissions are remarkably complex. In fact, if you're sitting home bored some night, don't doom scroll on your phone. Get on Google and find a schematic of an 8-speed automatic transmission. It'll blow your mind, the amount of stuff in there from a car. So I guess I'm assuming that packaging is one of the problems, which is why we have semi-automatic and clutchless and all these other sorts of things. But if a motorcycle just had a regular automatic transmission that was as efficient as what you'd find in a Lexus, I mean, I think we would have gone there a long time ago.
It's hard to say, as Michael E. Lyric, who's been on this podcast many times,
too many times.
I'll leave you two to sort that out. He says that motorcyclists are by nature a very conservative bunch, and they like their 5-speed, 6-speed gearboxes and their standard shift transmissions. Personally, I have not spent enough time on automatic transmission motorcycles to form an opinion on them either way. But I do know that I do like my 5-speed and my 6-speed. So why change, right? I also enjoy.
That's the spirit. That's the spirit, Zach.
Exactly. I do like a quick shifter sometimes on some bikes. It's nice to have, but I don't have a quick shifter on any motorcycle I currently own, and I do just fine without it. So it's a hard sell for people, especially when motorcyclists also view technology as adding expense. And everybody wants to save money on their motorcycle.
That's what they say. And we say we don't want technology, which is curious. And yet, if something doesn't have technology, typically it's not been a good seller. So there is a paradox there. We say we want one thing, but we don't necessarily buy it.
Yeah, it's hard to analyze this from every motorcyclist's perspective because everybody's different. If I was buying another motorcycle tomorrow, I would want ABS, I want fuel injection. And yet, my favorite bike to ride in my fleet these days is my old Bandit 1200. It's air cooled, no ABS, no fuel injection. In fact, the front brakes barely even work at this point. They need to be taken apart with the fluid flushed. So, what you like isn't necessarily technology. It just you like what you like. Look at people riding Harley Davidsons. They're actually quite technologically advanced, but the point of their technology is to impart an old school experience. And as a result, people buy them. They are the biggest selling large capacity motorcycle brand in the United States.
Well, interesting that you just mentioned the brand Harley-Davidson, because I had a chance to sample a Harley-Davidson Pan America CVO, mind you, and three other ADV bikes recently. Brand new 2025 ADV bikes. So I was really looking forward to riding the Pan America, and I don't believe you've tried one yet. Is that correct?
That's right. I asked to try it last summer, and it didn't. The CVO model was new last summer. It didn't get shipped out here, so I haven't been on it yet.
Good. So I can say anything, and you can't contradict me. I love this. Well, it was really interesting because of course, for Harley Davidson, it's a massive change of course for them, and when they've done different bikes, it's not always worked out well for them. For instance, what was the low rider thing? What was that called? The V-Rod.
V-Rod?
V-Rod. I think the V-Rod had one of the greatest engines ever put in a motorcycle. Now, apparently it was massive and heavy and couldn't be applied to something else, but the riding position on that thing was ridiculous. It was like a dragster, and it was absurd and absurdly uncomfortable. But the engine itself was a gem, and I believe a lot of the work was done by Porsche, which I think showed in its sophistication, but which has nothing to do with the Pan America. Anyway, it was a peculiar bike because I rode it with three other bikes: the Triumph Tiger 900, the KTM Adventure 1290, and the Tenere 700. And I think it's important to remember that the term ADV bike is just so broad now. It can be anything from a 400 single to a multi-cylinder 1300 or larger Ducati Multistrada, which is about as far away from a DR as you can get, or a KLR. But the Pan America was a really peculiar motorcycle, and I didn't go into it with this anti-Harley-Davidson bias. I really didn't. I don't have any overwhelming bias against anything. I think 650 V-Stroms are really boring, although I can acknowledge that they're a wonderful motorcycle at the same time. But about the Pan America, the other bikes you'd sort of swap around, and as soon as you get on it, you just rip off and away you go. But the handling of the Pan America felt really odd. It felt really kind of unnatural at first. It felt kind of top heavy. And the seat was much lower than any of the other bikes. It's almost like Harley-Davidson couldn't really bring itself to make a sky-high seat on an ADV bike, which is not a bad thing, except you paid for it in legroom. But it didn't, to me, really feel like an ADV bike at all. It really felt like a classic sort of sport touring bike, like an FJR Yamaha, in terms of how the ergonomics were. And the engine was kind of oddly bland and kind of clattery. Now, it went down the road really well, and the saddlebags were beautiful, three hard bags, top case, and two panniers. And that was gorgeous. But it's a heavy bike. But it was sort of hard to get my head around it. And I did a beautiful road on it. We hit a road End of the day, sun setting, 50 kilometers, 35 miles of just gorgeous twisties along a river. And I mean, it can haul ass. I mean, it actually, once you kind of get used to it, it works really well. And as a sport touring bike, you sort of sit down in it, but it didn't really feel at all like any of the other bikes, which really do. Even the KTM, which is a massive motorcycle. I'll get to that in a second. But it didn't really show. It didn't feel like it was a bike you'd take off road until until I took it off road, and it didn't really have suitable off road tires. And I buried it in about 1.5 feet of water and fell off. The bottom was silt. So I went for a bit of a trip. In fact, it was a good crash because I got the liner of my helmet wet, which really shows you that I did go completely underwater. And then I had to pick it up, but my feet kept slipping. And so it took me a long time to get it up. And then everyone I was riding with, of course, was in front of me when this happened. And it took a long time for them to come back and get me. But they eventually came back reluctantly. But it was a really odd motorcycle. And I would encourage anyone to try it for themselves. Of course, don't base anything on what anyone else says, because that would be foolish. We know that by now at our ages. But I would encourage anyone who is seriously interested in buying one to give it a go first, because I think if it fits that very narrow range of 95% on street, 5% kind of bad roads, has a nice upright riding position, it's very comfortable. Though if you have a long, gifted inseam, as I do, it may be not necessarily your best choice, but try before you buy. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger and some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe, worst of all, waiting for hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? Well, that era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and do-it-yourselfers, because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs to trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it, start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital. So you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle plates and paperwork shipped to your door, ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process, designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling your ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still own your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated, so you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast, and you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the fifth, "Is it still available?" message. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups, buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. The Lowdown Show is presented by ADVrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger Defend and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design, with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing.
How did you like the 1290? I've been on that bike, the previous generation version, and of course, the 1290 is soon to be replaced by the 1390. But how did you like that?
Is that so? I didn't know that. 1390? Really?
Yes, it's actually not a 1390. I think it's a 12 or a 1350, I think. But yes, it'll be coming in 26 at some point.
Well, the KTM, I mean, you can really tell it's it's dirt bona fides. I mean, it comes from a company that understands, perhaps not the financial ledger, but then again, neither do I. But they do understand how to make dirt motorcycles. Although my beef against the KTM is just the size of the thing. My God, it's huge. And it doesn't really show in photographs, but when you get I mean, it feels like it's that wide as that fairing just goes out and out and out. Which gives it kind of this porky feeling. And I say these comments. I think my favorite ever ADV bike is the early 950 and 990 Adventures. First of all, they look the bomb. They look like this bizarre Austrian army surplus. It looks like the bodywork was designed with sheets of drywall. I mean, but it had that stonking engine, tons of character, not overly powerful, not like the 1290, but enough power, and with a decent seat, comfortable enough, but you could still kind of hustle it down a dirt road. Now, still a big bike, of course, with a big V twin, but there was kind of a raw edge to it. And I think where I'm going with this is that a lot of national characteristics that we associate with motorcycles, we think of Italian bikes this way and American bikes that way. German bikes a different way, but there's sort of a homogeneous nature that's coming into them. Like, for instance, I rode a Multistrada V4 recently, and it was so well-mannered and so un-Ducati, and that's good for most people, but it seemed a little bit anodyne. It seemed very sort of generic in a way, and I was surprised at that. Now, mind you, you can go through a town in fourth gear and it's not bucking you off like the first gen Multistrada V twin. But I sort of felt that way with the KTM. I mean, it's eminently usable. It's big. It's got a load of power and it's comfortable. But there was something about it. It just kind of felt like a big V-Strom to me, like the 1050 V-Strom. And I was surprised by that. I mean, do you have thoughts on that? Because you've ridden all the big bore KTMs. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I remember the last one that I rode. It was down in California, and I remember we were out in the desert somewhere in the foothills, and I remember sitting on this long straight stretch of pavement and saying, I'm just going to see just how fast this thing will take off, because it was one of the earlier quick shifter editions, I think, and it was an absolute rocket ship. It felt like you were at El Mirage or whatever those Air Force bases are called when they put you in the rocket sled back in the days of the Apollo program, and you just sit in, strap in, and start banging.
Nice reference. Nice reference. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I saw it on TV once.
You saw it, exactly. As seen on TV.
The 1290s, I think they have the tank wraps around the engine a bit more now, like the 790 series bikes. They definitely did make some changes to the tank that make it a bit more bulbous. Having said that, at the KTM Adventure Rally, which was canceled in Canada this year, but just ran last week, I think, in the US, I've seen guys take those bikes and absolutely bash them through the woods and come out on the other side. They're missing some body work. They're missing some stuff, but they make it through. It is amazing how much you can push those bikes through. And that is every year that I went to a KTM rally, I was always impressed when I saw them emerge somewhat beat up, but mostly intact and running. And I think KTM probably made as much money off the parts truck at those rallies as they did off of their parts truck the rest of the year, because all those expensive bikes always came out, missing a piece of a fairing or an indicator or something.
Well, it is an interesting point that that they're so big. I mean, it's a V twin. I mean, the whole advantage of a V twin, other than there's a lovely cadence that V twins have, which I'm very fond of. V twins or V4s for that matter. But how does a V twin, which is this wide, now I realize you need rooms for radiators and indoor plumbing and all that kind of stuff, but why is it that wide? I don't know how it got so. The girth of it was just astonishing. And at one point, my fingers were frozen because it was very chilly when we were riding, and I couldn't find an engine to put my hands on. Which makes me think maybe manufacturers should have, when your hands get cold, little slots in the side. And here's another thing, and it's a huge bike and it's expensive, and it didn't come stock with hand warmers, heated grips, which I think is like, really. Here's what a bike should have, in my view. And according to Neil, a bike should have an ADV bike should have a center stand, ABS, and heated grips. Like, that should be non-negotiable. Keep your 14 modes. No, I'll take a rain. I'll take a rain mode. And really, I think that sometimes we go down this rabbit hole of too many esoteric traction control options, when really you just need those sort of basic things. But the KTM, certainly off-road it would go really well, but also, like, these weren't our bikes. They were from a manufacturer, so we don't care if we fall over and bury ourselves in a pond like I did. But who is really going to ride that off-road? Now, you made an interesting point, which is that good riders, exceptional riders, can do anything on any bike. But it doesn't really pertain to those of us who have riding skills that would be considered within a normal range. Because those bikes off-road, and it wasn't super technical off-road, but you really felt that, man, oh man, if things go to hell, as they did, things are going to get bad. Did you just speak in a childish voice, Zach?
No, my kid too did. Hang on a second. Alexa, I'll have to come down later, okay? Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay, Zach. We're going to leave this in. I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to cut this out.
As far as thoughts on that, I think most riders are more capable than they realize. I would not consider myself a hotshot street or dirt motorcyclist. In fact, just the opposite. I am a clumsy and terrible oaf at anything that involves hand-eye coordination. Having said that, I own a Bandit 1200, which isn't even an adventure bike. I put a set of Dunlop Mutants on that thing, and it is amazing to me where I can take that bike on a gravel road if I want to. I was pushing my luck so far with that bike that I said I'd better buy an actual real adventure bike, or I will destroy this motorcycle, which doesn't deserve it. So I bought a Super Tenere last year. Yamaha Super Tenere is probably the largest adventure bike that you could get from a manufacturer these days. They discontinued it recently, but
it's pretty flabby, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not powerful. It's not particularly good at anything except being big and heavy. And yet, I find it actually incredibly easy to ride off-road once you've got a little bit of seat time in it, put your time in. I wouldn't take it to the places that people take their bikes on the KTM Adventure Rally, but I've taken it to some pretty sketchy spots. And especially if you have a spotter to help you, I think most people can challenge themselves and take things a lot farther than they do. As far as your comment on the heated grips, they might have actually had them on that bike and the option just hadn't been turned on. A lot of this stuff now comes on motorcycles, the electro features. You have to pay extra to have them switched on. So it's possible that was the case.
The third bike of the four that I rode was the Tenere 700, and I'd done quite a bit of mileage on that in the last few years. And for long distances, we went about 1,500 miles in a few days, and it really felt. I mean, context is everything, right? But compared to the Pan America, the big KTM, and the Triumph 900, which I'll talk about in a minute, it really felt like a real dirt bike. And some of the speeds we were going were above the speed limit. I know that will shock you. And at high speeds, the Tenere, I'm talking really like straight to jail speeds. Yeah, the Tenere felt a little bit nervous. Although it could do those speeds, it just moved around a lot. So it wasn't really great sort of. It's not on the touring end of those sorts of things, unlike the other bikes, which are capable of touring. But off-road, man, there was a rider with us who, although he's an exceptionally good rider, kind of bonded with the Tenere and wouldn't let any of us, the rest of us, ride it off-road. But I know from previous experience, I mean, it's a nice compromise. If you're doing if your riding is anywhere like 60-40, 60 street, 40 dirt, 70 street, 30 dirt, if you're up into 30% off-road, even fire road, the Tenere 7 is a brilliant bike, and it's a lovely engine, and it's a great motorcycle, deservedly so.
Yeah, I've been on the other side of that coin. When I did a tour of Newfoundland in 2021. I was on a KTM 390 adventure, and a guy with us had the 700. So I was the guy that was, on the even lesser powered motorcycle, and he had the fast bike. And you say maybe less street oriented, and I can't speak as to what speeds you were traveling. I'm sure it was all, prudent and reasonable. But I will say this. Yeah, the 700s are not the same as 1290, but the reality is you can grossly exceed the speed limit and get into lose your license territory on one of those bikes very quickly.
Absolutely.
And one of the unfortunate, well, it depends how you look at this, but one of the realities of modern motorcycling is that the noose is drawing tight. Here in Canada,
my God, that sounds ominous. Dum, dum, dum. Can we add some music to that? Tell me about this noose that you're talking about. Zac.
The noose is anti-stunting laws. Here in Canada, almost every province now has near identical legislation that says if you're caught riding, I think it's more than 30 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, the police can do all sorts of nasty things to you and your motorcycle. Now, some U.S. states probably have similar laws where it might be felony speeding or something like that. I do not have an encyclopedic knowledge of all 50 U.S. states' traffic laws, but I will say this. It is getting harder and harder for people like you and I who travel at prudent and reasonable speeds, which may not be the same speeds that are on the sign at the side of the road. It's getting harder and harder to get away with that kind of thing. In Europe, it's already over in many places. And here, they're bringing in traffic cameras, and it'll be like that here next. So if that's the case, a 700 is really not that bad of a compromise, because your 1290 was just that much more temptation to earn you a date with Johnny Law.
Well, thank you for being a wet sock, Zac, and channeling my late mother, who would have said pretty much the same thing. If the speed limit is 55 miles an hour, what do you need something that goes 56 miles an hour? So, I mean, you've done that effectively. I mean, it's a worthwhile point, but I would say two things to that. The first, which I just slipped my mind. Oh, yeah. The first is that middle displacement charismatic motorcycles are far better street bikes, like my old Ducati street bike, which makes all sorts of noise, more heat than light. And it is ideal as a street bike because when you're going 70 miles an hour, it really feels like you're moving. So I prefer smaller or certainly lesser powered bikes for the street. And of course, the other side is that a big bike, if you are doing big miles with a passenger and a load, nothing beats 125 horsepower at the rear wheel, because then you just loaf along. And that line of traffic in front of you, where someone's pulling a boat and the double dump truck, they don't matter. You just go. And so I'm of mixed two minds when it comes to power.
I think most experienced motorcyclists would agree. Despite my wet blanket statement earlier, I am definitely in the no replacement for displacement camp. Of my motorcycles, which I own, I have 6 bikes right now. I like my Bandit 1200 on the street. It is extremely fast compared to my little 250 or 650 dual sports, and even faster than my Super Tenere. And hey, it's fun. And even my Super Tenere revolutionized what I could do in a weekend. Before, if I wanted to ride off-road in Cape Breton, you had to add an extra day of travel each way on your 250 or your 650. Now, I can ride there in a day, ride off-road, and ride home off-road the next day and ride home the next day. So it's definitely the case that a bigger adventure bike will let you travel further and do more things, see more places.
That's actually travel farther, because farther is a measurable distance, and further, you look into something further, right, Zac?
That's why I am a history teacher and not an English teacher.
But I mean, for the kids listening, we have to get these things right. The fourth bike that I rode was by far my favorite, and this was a surprise to me. The old Triumph triples had this gear whine, which really rankled me, and I don't know why, because I like noisy things and clattery things. But there was a frequency coming from this thing that just old Triumph triples that didn't work for me. So I got on the new one, the Tiger 900, and my God, did it sound good? Not loud, but there was a beautiful sort of burble from the exhaust. And of all four of those motorcycles, KTM, Harley, was the other one? Yamaha. It was by far my favorite. My God, what a lovely motorcycle it was. And a nice size, not massive like the KTM or the Harley. But more substantial, especially for extended road use, more substantial than the Tenere 7. But it's a really beautiful motorcycle. It shifted beautifully. Its suspension compliance was just perfect for road use. You could seriously hustle this bike down a road. You could the other ones too, but the Triumph it had an eagerness and a willingness to it. It's an astonishingly good bike. Now, unfortunately, it didn't come with any luggage, so I had my stuff bungee corded to the back, which was no fun. But you can get luggage. It's just the manufacturer couldn't get luggage for us, which I don't understand that. But anyway, but it was an amazing bike. I was really shocked at how good it was.
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. I wrote an article back at the start of the year titled "Whatever Triumph is doing, it's working," and it is. They're setting sales records now, just about every year. They've got a wide range of
hang
bikes.
on. It's contextual. It's like personal sales, like they're personal sales records, not overall industry records.
No, that's right. Yeah, Triumph
Okay.
is selling more bikes than ever before, and people like them. I don't think Triumph honestly gets the respect that it deserves. I mean, they're a small company, and they make motorcycles in just about every segment of the industry at this point. They don't have a super cheap 250, 300 sort of entry level thing, but they have their 400 now. They've got, as you said, they got the 900 platform. They got excellent retro machines. Now they've got dirt bikes. They're doing a lot, and they're a small company, but they're passionate about what they do, and that shows through in their machinery. The flip side is they're actually good at making money, which is perhaps
odd these days.
yeah, in the European motorcycle world, that can sometimes be a rarity. But part of that is because they actually are making their motorcycles in Thailand.
Yeah, well, it must be said that we believe they're making money because they're a privately held company, unlike most other companies. But it seems like John Bloor, and I guess it's his son, kind of running things now. But I mean, Triumph has always made and I think that John Bloor, to his credit, from people that have worked at Triumph that I've spoken to, he's very unemotional about bikes. Hence his ambivalence towards racing. And yet, I think Triumph, and here's, I think, a sort of a tangent on this, which is that privately held companies have such an advantage over publicly held companies because they can look into the future. They can think 10, 15, 20 years down the road. When if you have shareholders, they need dividends. There's a real short-term thinking. And this is one of the things that's kneecapped Harley-Davidson of late, which is that, Zeitz was brought in, as Michael Kurylyk explained to me, to maintain a share price. And it really, it's more than, it's not about building motorcycles or seeing the company into the next century of production. It's just kind of keeping the wolves from the door. And Triumph, in my mind, would be a perfect example of what Harley-Davidson could be, which is they have a lot of, they've got real character. They've got these retro bikes, which you can equate to Harley's range, the entire range, pretty much. But then they make a really great, and here's what the difference, I think, between Triumph and Harley. Triumph made a 400, and I haven't ridden one, but I was looking at one in the dealership the other day, and that's a really nice looking bike. Now it has low spec components, but you look at the 400 and then you look at the larger Triumphs and it's all part of a family. And if Harley brings in this cheap Chinese parallel twin, whatever they're working on for this new next gen bike, If it looked like a real Harley Davidson, or mostly like a real Harley Davidson, then it makes this connection across the range. And Triumph has managed to do that through all their bikes. And I think these 900s are really, and first of all, I think adopting the triple as sort of the go-to power plant. Now they make singles, twins, and triples, but the triple is kind of the core motorcycle, I think, with a Triumph. It's a great engine, and it has it's a cliche, but it's got grunty like a twin, but it kind of revs out like a four. They're really a great engine, and I did the press launch for ADVrider for the Triumph back in the spring for the 1200, and it was a big bike. It felt like the KTM, but the 900 is just that much more diminutive, but it has lots of performance, and it is like, if you're going to do the ADV bike thing, the Triumph, to me, it would start and end at the 900s.
Yeah, that 3-cylinder engine has been a winner for them for so long, because I think it was the smartest thing they ever did. Because
it was drop the 4 cylinders, yeah.
To focus on the threes, even all the way back in the 90s, because that way you could make a motorcycle that was a powerful street bike, but you weren't going toe to toe with the 4 cylinders from Japan, right? Because back then they couldn't compete with Honda and Kawasaki, etc. But to a certain extent, you don't have to compete. You just have to have a motorcycle that's fun to ride and that people want to ride and people want to own. Looks good. When I was a young motorcyclist, I thought those big old bug-eyed street triples were just the best looking motorcycles that were ever made. And I still think they are still the best.
The early street triples. What year are we talking? 96, 7?
Yeah, around that era.
I saw one the other day in black, and it looked really good.
Yeah, they're a timeless design, and they had a timeless design. They had an engine that was unlike anything else on the market, and it had the riding characteristics that people want, had the look that people want. Ultimately, I think you say that Bloor doesn't really look at his products emotionally, and that could be true, but he knows that his buyers look at his products emotionally. And that's the difference. He's giving them something that they want because it's more desirable in their mind than the competition. And like you said, that plays out perfectly with their 400s, because they're great looking bikes. I've seen them down at the shows down in Las Vegas and, of course, in Toronto. I don't have a Triumph dealer locally, but where I have seen those bikes, they've amazed me. They're just so much further ahead than some of the other competition in the El Cheapo beginner segment. They're good looking bikes, and I would be happy to ride one. They look like a nice machine. Now, I would like a little bigger than a 400 personally.
But stop that. That's where the displacement creep comes in. Next thing, that attitude, young man, is what gives us 1390 KTM dirt bikes and 2000 cc Kawasaki cruisers. So take that back. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. Ever try to buy a car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger and some blind trust? Well, that era is over. Now, with secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.